Q95's lunchtime news update for today, Monday, July 3rd, 2017, brought to you compliments Fresh Vitamins.
At Fresh Vitamins, we've got everything you need for health and well-being. We carry a wide range of all-natural sports nutrition and health supplements, plus gluten-free and organic foods, all from quality brands, including Solaray, Cal, Bob's Red Mill, Nature's Way, Source Naturals, and Desired Away. Fresh Vitamins has 2 convenient locations. We're at number 7, Great George Street, Roseau, and we're in Portsmouth, inside IGA Whitchurch Supermarket. Join our discount club and save up to 20% every day on your purchases. Like us on Facebook to stay informed about our products and specials. Come into Fresh Vitamins today and get healthy.
Welcome back. In local news, 2017 OECS Cycling Championships winner, athlete Jim Bridges from Antigua and Barbuda, believes Dominica has the potential to produce professional cyclists. Speaking after his triumph at the championship, Bridges said if Dominican cyclists were to focus on climbing hills, a large part of the country's terrain, they could produce even better cyclists than anywhere in the region. Dominica participated for the first time in the 2017 OECS Cycling Championships hosted here on Sunday, July 2nd. 6 islands took part in this challenging experience. However, Antigua dominated the competition, taking the win. In other news, Trinidad and Tobago's opposition leader, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, on Sunday called for fresh general elections in Trinidad and Tobago after Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley fired his Public Utilities Minister, Marlene MacDonald, less than 72 hours after she was sworn in as a cabinet minister. The last general election was held on September 7, 2015, when Rowley led his People's National Movement to a 23-18 victory over the ruling coalition People's Partnership Administration, headed by Persad-Bissessar. A brief government statement issued on Sunday gave no reasons for the dismissal of the minister, who is also the deputy leader of the ruling PNM. This is the second time within a 16-month period that she has been fired from the government that came into office in 2015. And 18 people died when their tour bus collided with a lorry and burst into flames on the A9 motorway in southern Germany, police say. Another 30 on the bus were hurt and 2 of them were fighting for their lives. The bus was carrying a group of German pensioners at the time of the fire near Stambach in northern Bavaria. Bavarian Interior Minister Joachim Ehrmann said rescuers were delayed by golfers driving slowly and by the intensity of the blaze. The cause of the fire remains unknown. Traffic was reportedly moving slowly at the time, and the collision between the 2 vehicles was not described as a major crash. And this concludes your lunchtime news update, brought to you compliments Fresh Vitamins. I'm Linda Martin. Do join us again at 4 for the Prime Evening News Update. Good afternoon.
At Fresh Vitamins, we've got everything you need for health and well-being. We carry a wide range of all-natural sports nutrition and health supplements, plus gluten-free and organic foods, all from quality brands, including Solaray, Cal, Bob's Red Mill, Nature's Way, Source Naturals, and Desired Away. Fresh Vitamins has 2 convenient locations. We're at number 7, Great George Street, Roseau, and we're in Portsmouth, inside IGA Whitchurch Supermarket. Join our discount club and save up to 20% every day on your purchases. Like us on Facebook to stay informed about our products and specials. Come into Fresh Vitamins today and get healthy.
Good afternoon. July 3rd, a Monday. Welcome to Talk on the Block. We have a very interesting program ahead. I have the former UN ambassador, with me. Stick around and find out. But before that, a very interesting discussion with Thompson Fontaine yesterday. On Sunday, with Mr. Michael Williams on the issue of de-risking. Let's share some of that with you, and then we'll join the ambassador in the house. Let's listen to Mr. Mitchell Williams at this time.
Well, to get into that, we have to go back to where this phenomena came from. And this phenomena came from basically the financial crisis in the U.S. After 2009, with the collapse of many banks. The U.S. government sought to regulate the behavior of banks moving forward, and one of the seminal pieces of legislation that led the way, so to speak, for that particular phenomenon was the Dodd-Frank Act, which pretty much penalizes large U.S. financial institutions for the behavior of their customers, and their customers being individual U.S. customers, and also other small and medium-sized banks that use them as a correspondent bank. What has happened basically as a knock-on effect of that piece of legislation is that banks has decided, and we have to go back to what a bank is. A bank is a private corporation where its sole obligation is to its stockholders. It does have a social contract with its customers. But the banks basically have taken the position that it is cheaper to avoid risk than to manage risk. And so this phenomena, which is now called de-risking, is really banks avoiding risk rather than actually managing risk. And so what happens is that banking in 2017 and as early as 2010 moving forward has really changed from just a transaction-based system to really a behavioral transaction-based system. And so in the US, foresight, so to speak, where they wanted to regulate or have the banks police their behavior. They're not only asking banks to police their behavior in the US, they're also asking banks to police the behavior of everybody that is performing a transaction with them. And since we are small island states, we're pretty much integrated into the global community, and particularly the US community. Our currency is pegged to the US dollar. It's our major international trading currency, which means that most of anything that we do flows through the US. And so the US is policing the banks, and the banks have to police us. And so in the days when you would deposit your $1,000 in the bank every month, and that is fine, and you know, you do a little thing on the side and you make an extra $5,000, $6,000, and you could put it in your same bank account, and it was just more money. Now that is a change of behavior. The bank sees it as a change of behavior, and they need to understand, how did you move from depositing $1,000 every month to now moving to $5,000? And the other thing that a lot of people have to understand, that we have spent a lot of time putting in legislation to make financial institutions, banks in particular, the institution that you can put your money in legally. And there's nobody else that you could give your hard-earned cash to. And so the banks have an enormous obligation to ensure that any individual transaction does not throw down the entire system or put the system at risk. And that customer can be a sovereign, a government, a company, an individual. It does not matter anymore. And so what you have is twofold. One, banks have to make a profitability decision on customers. You know, what is the cost to maintain Dr. Fontaine's account? And they also have to make a risk decision as to, you know, what is Dr. Fontaine's normal behavior, and whether that poses an inherent risk to the financial system and to the bank. And what you are finding is that in the small islands, and you know, we're poor people, man, most of our accounts can never be that profitable to any bank in terms of its individual basis, in terms of maintaining that. And so banks will make the decision from a profitability standpoint. If it costs them a particular amount of money to maintain the compliance and to maintain that account and, local parlance, weigh what is happening in that account, and the account is not that material to the bank, then they just don't need the relationship. If your particular behavior is one where you're unable or unwilling to substantiate what it is that you're doing, that the bank is seeing you going through it, it's easier for the bank to just say, well, they don't want to deal with you. And every private corporation has its right to decide who it wants as its customer. You cannot go to a store and force the store to sell something for you. You go to another store. The problem we have now is that all banks in the Caribbean really are faced with the same issue. And it is something that we have to look at seriously, because what is happening, and what is happening at an alarming rate now, is that a good swath of the population in the Caribbean is becoming underbanked and ultimately unbanked. And we all know that for sustainable development, you have to have access to the formal financial system. And if we're faced in a situation where we're either too small, unprofitable, or we don't check our behavior so that we can remain in the formal financial system, then what happens? We can't go back to cutting our mattress and putting money. The world doesn't work like that anymore. You cannot even leave the country with more than 10,000 easy dollars. How are you going to trade in goods and services? So there has to be intelligent discussions on both sides. I mean, the World Bank did a study sometime in 2010, I believe, where they asked the question of both banks, money transfer operators, and governments, and the disconnect between where governments thought they were in terms of the legislation and the oversight that they provide. On one hand, I think it was something like 85% of those respondents felt that they had enough regulation and there was enough oversight that banks could rely on the legislative architecture to manage risk. Banks were in the 50s and the 40% of respondents saying that they actually believe that the legislation is in place is enough for them to rely on. So there's a huge disconnect between what governments and regulators are doing and what the banks perceive. And the banks basically have as their primary responsibility the safety and soundness of the institution, and by extension the entire global system.
But Michelle, what concerns me in this particular case, if what we're hearing is in fact the case and the extent to which it is happening, you have the closure of a number of overseas accounts, say, and I see this as an indication on the part of the banks to not want to deal with those risks, and the head office obviously applying the pressure on them. We've had instances, of course, where the Bank of America has actually shut down banking relationship with banks in Belize and in Trinidad and so on. And the question is that going to happen to us in Dominica? And one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, and in economics we have this area called rational choice theory. And rational choice theory has actually given economists a basis to make very informed predictions on issues of crime, of so many different areas. And I've been looking at this and just observing the behavior of the banks currently. Mm-hmm. And as banks behave now, to me that is sending a very, very strong signal as to the way they will behave in the future, or what is coming down the pike. I would like you to tie this for us with what you see, the pressure that's being applied on the banks in the Caribbean, the fact that they've moved to shut down some relationships. In some cases, we have banks trying to prevent that from happening, but we think it is happening. And tied to all of this is the whole question of the CBI and the due diligence program that is or is not in place, and the fear that international banks have that their banking systems are being used to finance illegal drug activity as well as money laundering that could probably finance terrorists.
Well, one of the things that I always say, the bank again is a private corporation. The bank cannot demand a conversation on any particular topic as it relates to CBI. And the conversation of CBI has really been as to whether it is good or not good. But the devil is always in the details. And I think the conversation really has gotten very polarized as to whether it's something you should do or something you should not do. CBI has been around for a number of years. The question is, how do you do it, and how open do you make it so that the stakeholders that you require to make it work understand what it is that you're doing. Banks are institutions that don't necessarily have to rely on what a sovereign say. If they don't like it in a country, they can pack up and leave. But if they leave, what do you do? And so you have this thing where the conversation, even from all sides, has been, you either do this, or what are you doing? You're not saying what you're doing. We don't understand what it is that you're doing. The transparency, the accountability is not there. You can use whatever politics you want about it, but the fact of the matter is the bank cannot demand, and even when they demand, there is resistance. But they cannot demand to see everything in the public domain. People say that, this is private government business, but private government business needs to go through a bank that isn't part of government. And even if the bank is government owned, it still has to answer to another bank that isn't government owned. And so, at the very least, even if you don't want to make it public to your constituents, which you probably should, but that's a different argument. But you have to lay it out. People need to understand you cannot just say you have due diligence. What is due diligence? I mean, I do work across the Caribbean, and due diligence varies widely from what people consider to be due diligence and what the people you're giving the due diligence to consider it to be. And so, what exactly does the bank require as it relates to CBI? The bank is under no obligation to tell any sovereign what they need to do. It is left to the legislatures and the parliamentarians to debate it properly so that they can set the parameters that is allowed. And I think there's not enough conversation. People get shut down and they're trying to find another way. But there is no other way. And the trying to find another way creates even more uncertainty and more skepticism on the side. And at the ending of the day, the argument as to whether it is fundamentally needed or not, I mean, it's our biggest income earner right now as a sovereign. There's no question about that. We have to find a way to do it. But you cannot do it without being part of the formal financial system. And the formal financial system has regulations in place to say that they need to police every transaction that is coming through them. And by extension, they need to know who is bringing every transaction in them, and they need to be comfortable. The problem with comfort is that comfort is a subjective thing. I may be comfortable with Dr. Fontaine, but that doesn't necessarily mean Bank of America is comfortable with you. And that doesn't necessarily mean Deutsche Bank in London is comfortable with you. And you see the rhetoric in the United States right now where they're trying to carve out the world in certain sections, but they don't like this countries are this and that, and they're branding countries a particular thing, and so on and so forth. This is where the world is going. And at the ending of the day, we as a small country have to decide how, what side of the fence we're on.
And Michelle, on that note, I wanted to bring it home to the listener now. You have somebody in Biosh listening to us this morning, all right? Good morning to Biosh, by the way. Just a random village in Dominica. Listening to you and saying, but that does not really concern me. I mean, after all, the people are overseas. If they close their accounts, that's if they have, they can do otherwise. How can this individual in Biosh, who probably is getting some money, say, through Western Union from the family in the United States or through MoneyGram, how potentially could that impact upon this particular individual?
Well, listen to me. Western Union has banks in the U.S. as well. So it really doesn't matter what mechanism that you use to get money. The key is that the money that we generate in Dominica cannot sustain us in Dominica because we're not necessarily a very producing place. We import a lot of things. Those things have to be paid for. Everything you buy in the shop has to be paid for through the formal financial system, whether it's a small shop in Biosh that buying it from Astafans has to get it from outside of the country, whether it's Whitchurch, whether it's anywhere, Fine Foods, it doesn't matter. They all have to buy because we have to bring it in.
You just heard there Michelle Williams there, banker, speaking specifically of the de-risking issue facing Dominica as the Caribbean territory. Very, very interesting. We'll be playing some of the inserts as we go along this week. It was nice hearing Mr. Michelle Williams speaking there with Dr. Thompson Fontaine, who's back on holidays from South Sudan. It's 1:23. I don't want to be wasting any time. I know you're calling at this time. But with me in studios, prominent Dominican, former UN ambassador, Mr. Gregoire, Crispin Gregoire. He's here with me, and he'll be talking to you as well and taking some of your questions. Good afternoon to you, sir. Welcome to the studios of Q95.
Good afternoon, Matt, and thank you so much for inviting me on your show. And good afternoon to all Dominicans at home and in the diaspora, and our friends in the Caribbean.
Well, we've been hearing of you, from you, time and time again. But
really?
but it's been some time that we had you exclusively in studios. Mr. Gregoire, how you been doing? How are you?
Well, Matt, getting old.
It don't look so.
I can say, not hide my age, but I did turn 60 late last year, and so I'm in the last phase of my life, and as I look back,
Well, you've done well.
I think I've tried to do different things, and I still hope to do different things as we go forward.
Well, you've done a lot for Dominica. Again, I just want to congratulate you for all the work you've been doing, have done for Dominica. So how worried, how concerned are you about Dominica now?
Well, Matt, I am concerned about the future of the country. I see many gaps that need to be filled and filled quickly. I see our country's at a crossroads, basically, with no economy.
You say no economy?
Well, no vibrant economy. We sought out in 2000 to build a new economic reality in this country, the pillars of a new economy. That was what we campaigned on when I was one of the people leading the charge with Rosie Douglas and Pierre Charles. And I see, I'm now able to look back 17 years, and we've made some progress in some areas. Yes, I would admit that. But in the key strategic areas, we're still lacking. For example, on energy, we have been building geothermal, and one of the things that hurts me is that I was one of the people, I started the geothermal program, but you don't hear my name, and you don't hear the kind of resources I raised. I raised 7 million euros for the geothermal first phase. That was Pierre Charles' project, actually. Pierre Charles was the one who started the geothermal program. He asked me to find the money, and I told him I was going to look for grant money, and that's what I set out to do. Once I was out of the equation, they have not talked to me about geothermal. I built a relationship with Iceland to give us technical assistance, and that fell by the wayside, and I don't even know what is the status of geothermal here. But so that's one. But one of the things that I had cautioned about, and they didn't pay attention, was the dependence on Petrocarib. That was what President Chavez gave us. Was, in my view, a stopgap measure to adjust to a changing reality of price rise in oil, and in 10 years we should have embraced it and gone the other way of having our natural energy resources be what we depend on. Because my view for Dominican people is this, that one day we'll all be able to cook on electricity, we'll all be able to drive vehicles that are electric vehicles. Let's say 20 years from now, that's where we should be going. But I'd like to see every Dominican home stop using gas, but we have cheap electricity to cook our food, cheap electricity to wash our clothes, cheap electricity to give us lighting. But we're not there yet. And the reason why we're not here, we're not thinking out of the box, because at one time we were premised on interconnecting with Guadeloupe and Martinique. The whole premise of geothermal was to do that. That has fallen by the wayside. Because
what has happened to geothermal? Where are we as we speak?
Well, frankly,
from your latest information,
I don't know, because well, the last thing I heard the administration say was that they were going to use CBI money to build 2 3.5 megawatt plants. So that's 7 megawatts. That won't change the situation in the country. We'll still be dependent on diesel with 7 megawatts, because the backup of the 7 megawatts, you know, we have an installed demand of about 15 megawatts. So if you're doing only 7 with geothermal, you haven't solved the problem that Dominican has with energy. You understand? So we've not built up hydro, and we've not put up windmills. So you look at Guadeloupe. You go to Guadeloupe and see the number of windmills up. Dominica only has 1 windmill that I know of. That's at Rosalie Bay Hotel. We should have already built that wind capacity, so we could have gotten that 15 megawatts covered by whatever else, hydro, solar, wind, because the technology is changing. When we thought of the geothermal back then, today solar price has fallen, largely because the Chinese solar panels have reached a critical mass of good quality, so they're beating the Germans, who did the best solar panels. They're beating the Americans. So now the price has dropped by half. So, you know, it's cheap. We're going to reach a stage very soon where you don't need to be connected to Domlec to have electricity at your house. You just simply put some panels on your roof. And then you could even sell that excess later on. So that whole energy thing, we need to take a new look at it. I would say what we need to do in the shortest possible time is get Dominica off Petrocarib completely for electricity.
Let's talk a little. You mentioned Petrocarib, and immediately I thought of Venezuela and what is happening there. Have you paid attention to what's going on?
Very close attention, because...
What's your thoughts on Venezuela and the troubles there?
Yeah, my first thought about Venezuela is that Venezuela is our neighbor. In particular, Dominica, more so than any of the other OECS countries, because of bedrock. Bedrock, we have a relationship with Venezuela as they are our neighbor. They're Dominica's neighbor, and they treat us as a neighbor, irrespective of whether it was President Chavez or President Maduro or President Andres Perez before, when Prime Minister Eugenia Chávez was in office. You know, so Venezuela has always treated us as a friend, and they are our neighbor, and we treat them. So whatever, you know, we say, if something is happening to your neighbor, you need to be concerned because it could happen to you. The situation in Venezuela is chaotic and confusing to a lot of people who don't understand the internal realities of Venezuela. The thing is that the rich people in Venezuela, the oligarchy, they were kicked out of power by Chavez, by President Chavez, and they are fighting tooth and nail to get back in power. Frankly, I'm not so embracing of the oligarchy of Venezuela. I would much prefer to see that the Chavistas maintain power, but the problem is that they have not been able to, they didn't manage the economy well, and now they have a problem of goods and services being scarce, especially goods. So there's nothing in the stores, and when people can't buy things, then they get upset. And Venezuela is totally dependent on oil. They don't have any other major industry. But I'll tell you, Matt, one of the things that surprised me when I went to Venezuela is that the electricity is all run on hydro. 95% of Venezuela's electricity is on hydro. They are exporting all their oil. They're not depending on oil for their electricity. I think that there are some things that are being done politically that is of concern. The question is, it's really their own internal thing, and I'm not getting into the internal thing. The Venezuelans will sort out their problems, in my view. The question is that they potentially could have a refugee problem because they have a border with Colombia. People will start fleeing to other countries. And then there's also the problem of drugs, that when you have instability, drug dealers are operating freely, and Venezuela may be a conduit for drugs coming into the rest of the region. These are concerns I have. But here's my concern as far as Dominica is concerned, and that is, up to this point, we have not signed a delimitation, a maritime delimitation with them on our boundaries, but rock.
Bird Island, okay.
Yeah, not an island, rock. I say rock mainly because rocks don't have any territorial waters under international law. And we have not, in fact, we should embrace, right now is when we should do it, before anything happens and Maduro may be out of office, and we don't have an agreement with them on a maritime delimitation. We now have to face another government coming in that's not friendly. And I can tell you, if the opposition wins in Venezuela, however they win, they will not be as friendly as the Chavistas.
So am I hearing you say here, please be very explicit here.
Yeah.
You prefer, as we speak, that Maduro stays in power?
Yes.
And why?
I would like to see Maduro's finish service term and let there be new elections. I would hate for it to be resolved in the streets, because it will be bloody, and it will be very bloody. It could lead to a military coup. The military might just decide to step in and take power. I think that that Maduro has to make some concessions, and the opposition has to make some concessions. And what I would like to say is, let him finish his term. It's 2019. And then let's go to elections, or Maduro might consider, let's have early elections. Something has to give, but we don't want bloodshed there. It would not be in the best interest of...
You smell bloodshed?
Oh yes. It's there already, Matt. It's in the streets daily. People are dying. I mean, over what? 30 people have been killed?
No, more than that. I heard that about 85 on the
85
weekend.
now? Okay, what has happened in this?
4 more have been added, yes.
Yeah. So you have bloodshed already, and this thing can escalate. What I see, if they don't come to a compromise soon, the military might just step in and take power and postpone a democratic thing for some time. They might hold power for another 5 years. That is real. That is real.
Let's come back to Dominica here. And of course, since January 1, 2017, it seems that we have some international focus following this big CBS program that we had. Ambassador, how concerned, and where are we post CBS? Where are we at this time? How concerned are you?
Well, Matt, the 60 minutes, 60 minutes is probably the most watched investigative reporters show in the U.S. And when a story breaks in 60 minutes that is not favorable to you or to a country, you get some blows, and that is what has happened. We've taken a beating. CBS has exposed us, and it has exposed the actions of our government. And the worst part of it is for CBS to broadcast it in a 6-month period. It was rebroadcast with an update, tells you that this thing is escalating, and the government is they're totally unable to counter CBS, and they can't. They can't. I mean, the worst part of the CBS thing was...
Should they have taken an opportunity to speak?
They should. And I should tell you, they were approached, huh? The government of Dominica was approached by CBS 60 Minutes. CBS told me that. And I said to them, well, why don't you make another effort to get the Dominican government to give their side of the story? And they said they would try to do that. I don't know when they did the rerun, the second phase, and the update, I don't know if they tried to speak to the administration. But if I was in the administration, I'd fight tooth and nail to get my view across. And the fact that they did not do that was to their disadvantage.
Tell me about your views on CBI, or let's just say CBI for now. We'll go to diplomatic passports. What's your view? Are you for CBI?
Matt, if you Google my name, right, and you go back to a New York Times article, you'll see where I said that I'm not a fan of CBI. Simply because, I am worried. I can't say I'm a pragmatist sometimes, and sometimes I may be more ideological other times. But I would say that my gut feeling is that CBI should be closed and shut down. On the other hand, one may caution me and say, well, that's the only thing bringing in income into the country, so do you shut the country down?
Because someone might say, well, your critics might say out there, you're not for development. This is the only thing bringing development, if you will, to Dominica at this point. Well, that's what your critics will say.
What I would say to them is that before we had that program, how did we bring development money into this country? Because remember, this program started under the Freedom Party. Before that, how did we get money for trading? How did we pay for the goods we imported from abroad? It was through agriculture. So we've allowed agriculture to collapse and replace it with CBI. That is totally unacceptable to our future aspirations as a people. We've got to feed ourselves. So if we have to get passport money to feed ourselves, then we're in trouble. Now, what's going to happen to us down the road is that we'll have to sell so many passports to keep that income coming, then we'll end up having more economic citizens than natural-born Dominicans. That's the first problem.
That will happen? That's a repercussion?
That could happen. The second thing is that, and that is where I'm more concerned, we had the Alien Landholder Act that made it more difficult for foreigners to buy land here. That was relaxed, started under the Freedom Party, but it continued. So all of these economic citizens, they have means, they have wealth. They can come here and buy as much land as they want. There's no limit on them. And if we don't watch it, future generations of Dominicans will not be able to buy land in their own country. So what is that? We have to migrate and leave these economic citizens.
That's a real possibility.
That is a real possibility. And for these reasons, Matt, I would say that we don't really need CBI to develop this country. We don't. Because before 93, when we brought it in, we had other ways. We produced things to bring in foreign exchange. So if you're telling me that CBI is the only game in town, I'll laugh at you and say that's foolish. And that's the position the administration has taken. If not CBI, what? Well, build your agriculture. What about water? You have the resources that the world needs. You have the most fresh water in the Eastern Caribbean, or even in a good part of CARICOM, except for Guyana and Dominican Republic. Why haven't you exported 1 gallon of water? Why have you become a water exporting country and have a water industry? Because if you think every gallon of water, if we could earn 25 US cents, think of the millions of gallons of water that go to the sea every day. You understand? So I don't buy this thing about it. I think right now we need to take stock of CBI. We need to say we've sold a number of passports. I want to know how many economic citizens there are. It's not enough to tell me it's in the Gazette. I want to know cumulatively from 1993 to now, how many economic citizens do we have?
That's a real concern there.
Yeah. And then secondly, what are their nationalities? Because let's say we have about 300 to 500 Russians have Dominican passports. I've seen the list, so of at least 300 Russians, right? We have people from the Middle East. We have all kinds of, we are a multinational country now because of CBI, I'm saying this piece of real estate that was left because of the Kalinago people and the Negmawan, and we toil on the plantations of this country, and today we're at risk of losing our country because of CBI. That is a non-starter.
Other critics say we should have a lot of security concerns at this time. I mean, now the Canadians have basically shut down their borders to Antiguans with visas. what should be our own security concerns, Ambassador?
Well, we had already lost Canada before, so the Antiguans are only they're now following our footsteps, and they should clean up their act. But the point is that there are security concerns from the two major powers up north, Canada and the United States. The United States sees the CBI as a threat to their national security. And the man who is now heading Homeland Security, General Kelly, when he was the head of the Sovereign Command in Panama, that's the military command of the United States in Panama for the Americas, he testified before the House Senate Intelligence Committee and said that CBI is a threat to U.S. national security. So we need to take this seriously. This is no joke.
You don't think Dominica's taking it seriously enough?
I don't think that's in our equation at all. I don't think that Dominica cares about that. But we need to care, because if they shut it down, if the U.S. shuts down CBI, then where are we, Matt?
Good question. I'm going to take some questions from you. The telephones are getting crazy here. We interviewed the ambassador, former ambassador to the UN, Mr. Crispin Gregoire. And we're taking some questions. Hello, talk to me.
A while ago you said you addressed him as ambassador. So I was wondering if he was still holding ambassador.
No, to me, an ambassador is always an ambassador. Go ahead.
It's always in the U.S., not in Dominica. Would he be holding the same status in Dominica?
Matt, let me respond to this lady here, right? Miss, I don't care what your orientation is, but I'll tell you one thing. I worked for the UN after I left the government of Dominica, and I was given ambassador rank at the UN level. So I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not the ambassador of Dominica. I served in that role. I was honored to serve. I moved on. The government fired me at the UN without talking to me. And I'm telling you, I don't care what people call me. As far as I'm concerned, my name is Crispin. I'm from Grand Bay, and
So call him what you want then. Go ahead.
No, but in Dominica, would you be considered an ambassador to Dominica?
I work for the government of Dominica, miss. I don't care what the thing is that I'm telling you, when the UN hired me, I was hired as an ambassador of the UN.
That's after your job.
Yes.
Of ambassador to Dominica.
So I don't really care about the
We're not going to debate
ambassador.
on that though. 144, you can call him what you want. Very humble guy. Hello, talk to me.
Blessings to you, my brethren.
How you doing?
I call Mr. Ambassador. Welcome to Dominica, sir.
Blessings, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Blessings, and I give thanks to you for contribution to country and humanity as well. Can I refer to you as doctor?
No. Blessings. I have an honorary doctorate, but I never mentioned that.
Okay. Well, let us leave that one alone.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Prime Minister and the foreign minister traveled to Russia with a real estate agent from Dominica. He came back, not a press. I listened to you talking about the possibilities and the ramifications that may be, coupled with all the madness. And for the future generation not being able to afford land in Dominica. And he did not meet with the press, for questions and answers. He went to the BS and he said that the media is stooping in the gutter and in the garbage for news and did not meet them. So it's very interesting. You are making that statement, and the brother went up there, he and Francis Barron, with a real estate agent. And not a question I want to put to you, sir. Roosevelt Skerrit said that the OAS has lost its relevance. Mr. Gregor, how do you see the OAS being irrelevant or lost in its relevance in the whole equation of what is happening in Venezuela, the possibility of all kind of sanctions and all kind of restrictions on us where CBI is concerned and all kind of criminals ending up with our passports? How do you really put all these things together, having to do with the far-reaching consequences again? Thank you, sir.
Well, on the Russia part, I don't know a lot what was the objective of that visit, but I do know that from what I read, that Dominica, the Prime Minister was positioning himself to be a broker for CARICOM with the Russians, and I don't know. Russia is trying to have influence in the sub-region, and that's fine. We can have good relations with the Russians. They are a powerful country. The question is that will our interests coincide with the Russians? That's just what we'll have to see going forward. Whether there will be their interests and ours will come together. As far as the OAS issue and how it relates to Venezuela, you know, there was that vote recently. CARICOM was divided as to how to support, to vote on this OAS issue. I think that there are concerns, there are legitimate concerns from the OAS and the Secretary General as far as the charter of the OAS is concerned. The American charter of the OAS calls for rule of law. It calls for internal arrangements that do not lead to anti-democratic behavior. And there are some things that has happened in Venezuela that is of concern, like, for example, the not letting the opposition play its role. The opposition has won the legislative arena in the last parliamentary elections, yet there are efforts to not allow the opposition to play their role, especially with regards to the budget. And then there was something that the court did. The Supreme Court passed some ruling that delegitimized the power of the opposition. You see, those things is what I call the creep towards the dictatorship. And anytime you have that, you will have an unstable country. So the OAS and the major players in the OAS, they recognize that Venezuela is creeping into instability, and that could have serious negative repercussions for South America and the Caribbean as well. So we have to look at peace and security of the region and not want instability to set in. So it's important that we say something when we see something going wrong. There are mistakes that are going on in Venezuela. But as I said earlier, you know, I'm very worried about the oligarchy coming back to power, because they were in power before Chavez, and they stole the money and they frittered the money away. So, you know, I would hate to see them come back and do the same behavior.
Okay, let's take another phone call. The telephones are going crazy here, this time from the diaspora. Hello, 149. We will talk electoral reform sometime later in the hour. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Martin. Good afternoon, Mr. Gregor. Welcome back home.
Good afternoon.
Educate us
Yes.
and to give us an insight of what is happening. I have a question, and you said something that is very, very frightening for we, the people in the diaspora who would like to return home to settle. If a new government come into office, can they reverse the holders of the CBI, those who are holding our passports? Thank you. This is Nerika, Atlanta, Georgia.
That's a good question. I think we can. I think by law, they're getting those. Once you become an economic citizen, you're an economic citizen by law, and so it will be hard for future government to revoke it. What I think future government can do is to reduce the numbers of economic citizens.
I can stop it altogether.
They can stop it altogether, yes. They can stop it. But those people, once they have citizenship, they have citizenship.
All right. Hello, 150. Hello.
Doc, I don't know if you may have missed the question there. What I was talking, because I'm thinking of what's that place name? Grenada. And I am talking about the OAS losing its relevance, and you made it very clear to see what the government is doing, having to do with impeding the roles of the parliamentary opposition. And even the court is further adding insult to injury. I am saying, how can the OAS become irrelevant if it merits some intervention, not an invasion, so to speak? But how can the OAS be irrelevant in that case there? You're talking about the concerns. Then they just watch Venezuela go down the tubes, and then it's just a concern. What about an intervention? Thank you.
Well, the OAS would not intervene in Venezuela. It would be a number of member states of the OAS who would decide to take some action. I would hate to see outside intervention into Venezuela, and I think that is why the good offices of the OAS becomes relevant and important, that through a diplomatic offensive an initiative that we would try to forestall further bloodshed. So it means that compromises would have to be made both by President Maduro and the opposition to not settle this score in the streets, because this thing is volatile. This thing can spiral out of control tomorrow morning.
Okay, let's get back to the telephone. Hello.
Good afternoon, Matt.
Good afternoon.
And let me say good afternoon and welcome back, Ambassador Gregoire.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah. You know, Matt, I am very happy that you've got the ambassador in studio.
I'm happy too.
Because, you know, up to this morning, you know, yours truly was on your morning show with you, articulating some of those points with regards to the CBU and, you know, de-risking and all the rest of it. And
CBU or CBI?
CBI, sorry. And, you know, a lot of our people, as, you know, you asked the ambassador the question if you think that the people are really treating it, you know, the level of seriousness that it deserves. And he said he don't think so. I am of that opinion as well, that the people on the ground here, as though they're not really grasping it. So I am happy when guys like Ambassador Gregoire come and speak about it, and, you know, this way they will listen more than just the regular folks who call the radio stations. So I have to thank the ambassador for the education, and I hope more of our intellectuals will follow suit.
All right, thank you very much. It's 1:52. You said earlier, in response to a question, that you were officially fired. We never got that story. I mean, it's a long time since 2009, but what happened? Why were you fired, Crispin?
Well, Matt, you know, there's a chapter of my life that hasn't been told. You know,
will you write that chapter?
Well, I'm lazy because I should have written it already, but, you know. But I'll tell you what happened. You know, there are a number of interrelated things that happened in the period of 2009 to 2010. First of all, I was the candidate to be the Granby
elections.
For the Labour Party. And there are forces within the Labour Party who didn't want that to happen, including the Prime Minister.
Why?
I don't know. It wasn't like I was interested in anybody's job. I simply wanted to represent the Granby people, as they had been asking for 2 elections before. You know, when the late brother Pierre Charles died.
And 2009, you think was the right time? 2009,
I was fully ready. Matt, you know, when you're thrust into a situation like what happened, Prime Minister Pierre Charles died. The Granby people saw me as the heir apparent.
Yes.
Right? But frankly, to be very honest, I wasn't ready. And it was just, I had to do it now. I really couldn't do it then. In 2000, then John Fabian ran and became the MP, and then he said to me in 2005 that, Crispin, you have to run. And I still was hedging at that point. So he said he will do it, but that's the last time. And he said to me, Crispin, come next election, you are running, and give me your word you're running. And I said, yes, John, I'm running.
Okay.
And Matt, you know, for 2 years leading up to 2009, there was a concerted campaign to derail my potential candidacy. There were machinations from within the Labour Party to block me as a candidate, right? So we march on, I fight, you know, I'm a guy, I like to find ways of removing obstacles in my path. So
right.
I do it quietly, I don't, you know, with no fanfare. So we get to the eve of the election, and I finally came back, and in the days immediately before the House was dissolved, the issue of dual citizenship became a top issue in the Labour Party leadership. I was one of the persons who had dual citizenship. So was the Prime Minister, so was Peter Seja, so was Deacon from Marigot, I can't remember his last name. And I said, well, there's no contradiction here. You know, the law says that you cannot run with dual citizenship. You have to give up the foreign citizenship. And we all agreed we'd do that. Well, the Prime Minister said it was too late for me to give up US citizenship, while he was keeping his. And I said to him, you have the same problem. We all have the same common problem, but we can resolve that. Well, he said, finally, he called to a meeting, and that was the last time I ever saw him since. I haven't seen him since 2009.
Wow.
And he hasn't talked to me since that time either. Well, we did speak when the Haitian earthquake happened, but that was the only time I spoke to him from the time of the election, before he dissolved the House. So he said that it was too late for me to renounce. And I found that rather odd, because renunciation is a very simple thing. You just go to the embassy of the country that you're holding citizenship and you take an oath to renounce. Now, with the American renunciation, there's a caveat there, and that is, when you take the oath of renunciation, they tell you right then, you lose it, you reach a point of no return.
Okay.
You lose it completely. However, right, they will check to see if you owe any taxes or whatever, and then they will make sure that you pay them the taxes
before they renounce.
Or if you have any court matter, right. But once you take the oath, you've lost it. And they told me that they'll punch a hole in my passport. I wouldn't be able to use that passport, and I wouldn't be able to get a visa back to the US for 90 days. So once you take that oath, it's irreversible. So anyway, I was prepared to do that, and the Prime Minister said it was too late. So I retreated at that point, Matt. And Matt, I could have, being one of the people who built the Labour Party, I could have said nobody's stopping Crispin Gregor from running for office.
You could have done that.
I could have done that. But given what I knew, I said at that moment at that table, I'm withdrawing, because given what I know, I don't really need to be around telling people to vote for Roosevelt Skerritt when I know that guy has serious contradictions. So I can walk up from the table and I can walk the streets of Roseau without having any kind of limitations and worries about what people will say. And I took a beating in Granby. I mean, people said negative things about me. Oh, I didn't run to Ron and all of that and so on. And then, but I should tell you that there is a schism ever since all of this happened. There is a schism in Granby. Granby Labour Party branch is not united because of Crispin Gregor. Not because I've taken any action, but there's some people, especially the current MP, who thinks that my supporters are making things difficult for her in Granby, and she hasn't really taken full control of the constituency. I don't organize in Granby, but I should say that I did inherit the Pierre Charles political machine. You understand?
You still believe that?
Oh yes, oh yes. Granby is Labour and will always remain Labour, but the Pierre Charles political machine is the political organizing force of Granby. It's not part of the current dispensation in Granby. Some of the people are involved in the Granby Council, for example. But these are the people who they're not fully united with the MP.
If Crispin Gregor today would decide, I'm gonna challenge, say, independently. We won't attach it to any political party. What do you think would happen?
Granby is a difficult seat to win if you're not Labour. And that's why I continue to say that I'm Labour, I'm independent Labour. I don't support the current dispensation of the Labour Party. But I'm Labour, all right? And I'll always be Labour because I had blood, sweat, and tears to build that Labour Party over 20 years. No one is going to push me out of the Labour Party. But I can choose to be independent and walk away from the day-to-day Labour Party. But that Labour Party is full of contradictions, so I don't want to be part of the
You don't want to be part of Labour now?
No. Well, I'm part of independent Labour. I belong to independent Labour, and those of us who left...
You don't think the Labour Party of Pierre Charles is the same Labour Party of Mr. Roosevelt?
Not at all. Not at all. That party, right? That party, no, is more of a freedom party than it is Labour.
You believe that?
Yes.
All
because
right.
Look at that. Most of the guys who are in government now, they were part of the Young Freedom Movement. They are just people who've become mature over time. But all of them, I would say 90% of these people...
What has changed between that Labour and this Labour? If you know what I mean.
Well, that Labour, one of the sad things for that Labour now is that they still continue to say all shall eat, but they don't live to that at all, right? So that's the first problem they have. The second problem they have is that they never worked one day in politics, but they got into power. Not one single day did these guys work in politics. And I would love to see them one day in opposition, because they would... What we went through to build Labour Party, 15 years ago...
So a few are benefiting right now.
Oh, yeah. And then, you know, they had called labor rights and have gotten no benefits. So that's one. The second thing is that they really haven't addressed poverty in any strategic way. Not Red Clinic. That cannot be your approach to solving poverty. I think that whole Red Clinic needs to be shut down and given to the Ministry of Social Welfare to deal with. It's not for a Prime Minister to have people coming to him every week seeking little help. I think that's a total waste of time.
You don't like that?
I don't like it, Matt. And I'd like to see that end.
This begging mentality.
I hate it. It's demeaning, and it's dehumanizing our people.
So what do people would say, well, the Prime Minister is helping the poor people? What you know?
Tell the Prime Minister, go and find work and build an economy. That's what we should tell him to do for us.
All right. We'll come back after a break of our sponsors, valuable sponsors. We're coming back, Dominica, after this. This is The Talk on the Block. We're talking to the ambassador.
Looking for a weekend getaway? A day out with the kids? How about a whale watch adventure? All this and much more awaits when you book a staycation this summer. Visit discoverdominica.com or call us at 255-8221 for details. Have you booked your staycation yet?
Staycation, 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 staycation.
The Dominica Water Sports Association and headline partner Kubuli present Dive Fest 2017, July 2nd to 16th. Families are invited to Rosalie Bay Resort, Sunday 2nd July for Turtle Love Day. Followed on July 7th with the Happy Hour Kickoff featuring Fanatic, Lale Coco. Saturday 8th, Discover Scuba, Anchorage Hotel, and Lobster and Mussels Lunch and Dinner, Sunset Bay. Sunday 9th, Whale Watch in the party in Anchorage from 9 a.m. Indian River Boat Rides, half price all day. Wave Dancer Water Sports, Outdoor World Vibes Radio Water Park Challenge, Picard Beach from 3 p.m. Followed by the Full Moon Beach Party. Monday 10th, a day at the fisheries. Tuesday 11th, Island-wide coastal cleanup. Then evening time, Belfast Estate, roast bakes and rum shots at Beluga, Citronelle. Music by DJ Epic. Wednesday 12th, Discover Scuba, Sunset Bay Club. Later down, come to the Juice Man, Pottersville for Smoothie Night with DJ Smooth. Thursday 13th, Lionfish Suppression Day and the Johnny Walker Xing Ping Ting at Fort Young Waterfront from 7 p.m. Friday 14th, Sac Passe, T-Vibe live in concert on the Strip. Saturday 15th, Champagne Reef Kids Snorkel Treasure Hunt, Discover Scuba in Portsmouth, and Aquaholic Drippin' Wet Water Park, Lale Coco. Look out for the free diving world record attempt in Soufriere. Dive Fest will climax with the Kalinago Canoe Races and the Kubuli Beach Party in Soufriere. Dive Fest is supported by Petro Caribe, Kubuli, Fort Young Hotel, Seatpath, Rosalie Bay Resort, the Boardwalk Restaurant, Johnny Walker, Outdoor World, Belfast Estate, Clare Harbor, the Discover Dominica Authority, Digicel, and TBS Radio.
Okay, we're back. And somebody sends me a very interesting WhatsApp message, which I'm going to share here. A very prominent individual who I will not speak of this afternoon. Matt, the Prime Minister is very uncomfortable with and downright intimidated by intelligent people. This is his own insecurity. He would not want Crispin Gregor close to him. The PM is a coward. He wants people around him who idolizes him and flatters him. When the PM hates you, it is a good thing. It means you are upright and have integrity and are intelligent. So these big men like Crispin, I'm sure, who are around the PM, So these big men who are around the Prime Minister are puppies and very sick men. Let's go back to the whole question of why he fired you. Did you feel intimidated by you, Crispin?
Well, I really don't know. Matt, you know, the thing is that there were, I should say, there were occasions when things did happen that maybe somebody like the Prime Minister could feel that Crispin is maybe too arrogant or
overshadows him.
Yeah, I'll give you an example, and it has to do with that one. I have never talked about it, Matt. I using your show to say that, but we had the Switzerland case. You know, not much is known about why Dominica took Switzerland to court. It had to do with a Russian who had a diplomatic passport, Roman Lashkin. He was, when I found out, I mean, we took Switzerland to court, and they didn't even inform me as the sitting ambassador that we had taken Switzerland to court.
You're not aware?
Not aware. So, and a diplomat from Djibouti, they sit next to us in the alphabetical order at the UN. So you have Djibouti on one side, Dominican Republic on the other side, and we in the middle of the two of them. Okay. So the diplomat from Djibouti, he's not even the ambassador. He told me, I saw that you all took Switzerland to court today. I said, are you sure? I said, maybe that's the Dominican Republic. I didn't, so I didn't know that our country was taking Switzerland to court. So he said to me, let's go upstairs and look at the website of the International Court of Justice for today. And you see the breaking news. Dominica had in fact taken Switzerland to court. And Matt, you know what was the worst thing? President Liverpool was not aware of it. I called the president to tell him that what had happened. And he said to me, well, can I send him the documents? I sent the website to him, and when he read it, he was really miffed. He was really upset. So he said to me, I'll call you back. I'm going to have an audience with the Prime Minister on this, and then you will have instructions from my office to take action. President Liverpool felt that we didn't have a case, and we should withdraw this case. And then he after consulting with the Prime Minister, he tasked me to withdraw the case, take all the steps to withdraw the case. Matt, within days, right, after that, it was publicized that this Dominica had taken Switzerland to court. Law firms all over the world were sending submissions to our office in New York to represent the government of Dominica. And I know, you know, it was awkward. But there was one particular law firm that wrote, and they sent their phone numbers, and they said call them, and they said that they would be willing to represent our government pro bono. And it's not often a law firm will do that. You know, the law firms, they'll milk you. So I called them, and I said, you know, and the guy who was the point person who would be on that case, he had worked for the International Court of Justice. So we began to have an affinity on the phone. We eventually met for lunch. We talked. I told him, you know, I'm not sure that case will go forward, but if we had to withdraw, what would be the implication? He began to give me insights into the process at the court itself. And then I basically, and I should say to you that the sponsors of this whole case was the foreign minister at the time, who is currently our president. I am not afraid to say that. So they were fronting for Roman Lashkin. And let me just take you back who Roman Lashkin is. He was an economic citizen who sold, he was also a passport agent during the time of the Edison James government. When he came to, when the government changed, he came back to Rosie Douglas asking to be appointed as the ambassador. Rosie sent him to Bernard Wilshire, and Bernard Wilshire said to him, you know, that's not something that they would entertain. What had happened was that when the Swiss appointed him, when Dominica appointed him the deputy permanent representative in Switzerland to the UN in Geneva, Switzerland, at first the Swiss agreed. The then ambassador at the time was also a foreigner, was Italian, called Mr. Lodrini. He was appointed by Eugenia Charles. And Lashkin was now his deputy. Mr. Lodrini died in office, and then the Edison James government tried to appoint Lashkin as the permanent representative. But the Swiss said no. And the Swiss said that the reason is he's a businessman, and his activities are incompatible with being a diplomat. And, you know, he was involved in some nefarious activities. And I won't go into all the details here, but anyway, so the Swiss now looking at me, and I was the one who established diplomatic relations with the Swiss just months after this all fell. So the Swiss are saying, but you all have a dispute with us. You don't even warn us, and you just take us to court, to the International Court of Justice. But Matt, here's what had happened, right? I had gone to China with President Liverpool. During that week that we were away in China, that's when all these papers were filed, and the lady who was working with me at the mission in New York, and she was the consul general. They told her, this can't wait for Ambassador Gregoire to do when he come back. So get it done and send the receipt that you filed all these papers. And the next thing I know that we now have a case with Switzerland. So I moved very quickly, and Matt, maybe that is one of the things that a black strike against me. I wrote the letter to withdraw the case and for the Prime Minister to sign.
He never signed?
He did sign. He did sign. And he did say that he had warned his ministers or whoever was responsible, the foreign minister at the time, Mr. Savary, that they should not take any action on until they answer a number of questions. But they did not answer those questions that the Prime Minister had, and they went on. The foreign minister and people outside the cabinet, who were the advocates for Lashkin, all right? So, but anyway, you know, I'm a K-passer from Granby. I can be ruthless in my own way. What I did was, when I took action, I fired at the same time the lawyer for Lashkin, because Lashkin told the government they don't have to spend a penny, right? So this lady, she's a professor of law from Sweden, and Mrs. Frankopan, and I in one fell swoop in the letter I wrote, Mrs. Frankopan was fired. She later on contacted me and she said, you know what, Ambassador Gregoire, thank you. You did the right thing, but I wanted to be the one. So she asked the Prime Minister to rewrite my letter saying it is on her advice that they're withdrawing the case. Because she wants to save her butt on her professional career.
World politics, they say, huh?
Yeah, so I said, but she told me, Ambassador, you know what? My life was threatened because they blame me for the case being withdrawn. But they didn't know it was this little boy from
So that was the
Brandon.
reason you think that you were fired?
I think that was one of the beginning. But Matt, going forward is that I get a call one day from the Permanent Secretary of Foreign Affairs, and they basically gave me 2 weeks notice. When the contract that I had with them said their own contract, 3 months notice in writing if you want to have early termination. I still have 6 months left on my
they still owe you some money since 2009?
They owe me money. They owe me gratuity money, which they have not paid, and they're scrambling not to pay. The contract was how you say it? They violated the terms of the contract, so you have to pay. Now, what they would have liked me to do is to take them to court. But given what has happened with the Gon Emmanuel case, and Sean Douglas has still fighting to get his money in the court, these cases are not coming to the fore. So my case would have languished like those. So I said, I'm not going to court.
You have no confidence, it seems, in the justice system.
Not at all, because they are, I wouldn't say that the justice system is totally out of whack, but it is in disarray. No question. When you have a backlog of cases like you have, and you have cases like Gon Emmanuel's case that's been languishing for, what, 8 years now? And then you also have a lot of criminals who are getting away with crime because of the prosecutor's office is weak. So there is the whole legal system is in disarray, and you know, it needs to be addressed.
I'll tell you what, we haven't taken a call the last 15 minutes, so we're going to take a few calls and then we'll get back again to talk. We're here until 3 o'clock. I'm here with Ambassador Gregoire. Hello.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Mr. Gregoire. What Mr. Gregoire just described, that's typical of Kerry with his backroom deals and changing the rules in the middle of the game, so that's no surprise there. Regarding to the CBI program, I think it should be shut down. There's no reason, there's not going to have any effect on the economy because there's not
Well, what about people who say we're making millions of dollars? Why should we shut it down?
But it was not used for the development of Dominica. There was only one set of people benefiting from it. So whether it's shut down today or tomorrow, it's not going to make any difference to Dominica. The money that Skerrit has been using lately, we don't even know where that money is coming from. It has nothing to do with the CBI. It's only now that he decides to go build a bridge or something. He and his goons are the ones benefiting from that CBI program. And regarding the revoking the passport, these CBI holders of our passports, if the Constitution is got amendments, Skerrit attempted to use it to enact laws to make things that were legal illegal. But the people that has the sense and the presence of mind, they go in there and they amend it for the benefit of the country and its citizens and revoke these people's citizenship and tell them they can run along. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Another phone call, so many phone calls coming here. This is the talk on the block. Hello.
Good afternoon, man.
Yes.
And good afternoon to Ambassador Crispin Gregoire.
Mark,
when a man can raise 7 million euros for Joe Fummel, that is an ambassador. It equates to hard work, it equates to good lobbying. That is a man we can depend on. Mr. Ambassador Gregoire stated that he has citizenship. The Prime Minister and Peter Seja. What might have gone wrong in the court then? Because the point is there was a case brought against the Prime Minister and Peter Seja. What might have gone wrong when we are hearing now from the ambassador? Of course, he's aware and he knows that they have citizenship. Thank you, Matt, for the opportunity.
You are aware that the Prime Minister had dual citizenship?
Well, what happened, Matt, it was actually declared at that meeting of candidates that week before he dissolved the House. In fact, that was the first time the party was hearing that maybe there were rumors around, but for the first time he owned up, right? In my presence. Well, here's what they did. They tried, again, it was part of their machinations to block me. They brought Alec Lawrence to the meeting to talk about who can legally be, who is legally qualified to be a candidate, eligible to be candidate. So when Alec Lawrence asked, any of you have dual citizenship, I put up my hand. When I looked around the room, I was sitting in the front seat, Mark, in the front row. When I looked around, I saw I had colleagues in the back of the room who had their hand up, including the Prime Minister. And but I said, that's not the problem. I mean, we can solve that problem by renouncing before nomination day. To my amazement now, after he said it was too late for me to renounce, I thought the man would do what I had told him to do, which was to renounce, he and Peter Seja, before nomination day. Then, man, after they let nomination day pass, they took their risk. And then somebody must have told them, boy, you guys are in trouble. So they're now writing to the ambassador of France to help them, give them special courtesy to renounce. But that is an idiotic stance, because all you have to do, if you really know what you're doing, you would go to the embassy of St. Lucia the next day, before nomination day, and take your oath.
So he was illegal then?
He was illegal. You know why he won the case? There are two reasons why he won the case. The judge put the onus on the opposition to produce the passport.
Present the evidence.
Right. Even though the opposition had all the details, the passport number, when it was issued, whatever. So the opposition simply couldn't do that. But the judge, and I always know it would come down to a political decision by the judge. That judge would not want to create a civil conflict in Dominica. Because can you imagine if the Prime Minister had to resign under the circumstances? Matt, all hell would have break loose in 2009, and the Labour Party would find itself in disarray. So the judge decided, you know what is for my own sake and for peace and tranquility in that little nature island.
So we elected Crispin Gregoire, an illegal Prime Minister?
Yes, we did.
Wow.
The guy was not, he had dual citizenship. I mean, Matt, just ask a fundamental question. Why do we get dual citizenship? Is it not to get a passport to travel on that citizenship? Why would you get American citizenship or French? The passport comes with it.
That's very clear. Let's take another phone call. I want to ask you a question about Montfared. And
yes.
we haven't dealt with the issue of electoral reform yet. Hello, talk to me. A lot of burning questions and suggestions here. 221. Hello. It's hot here.
Yes, Matt. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to Ambassador Christian.
I do apologize. I had you holding on there. Go ahead.
That's all right, Matt. That's all right. Matt, I want to correct something. I heard a script with Mr. Michelle Williams saying that the de-risking issue was after the 2008 bank crisis. Matt, Mr. Michelle probably is new to banking, but this issue has been on the burner since in the 90s. In fact, there was a Senate Banking Committee report on correspondent banking and its impact with money laundering. As a result of that, Matt, there were several legislation passed doing with compliance that included something known as Know Your Customer. Under the Know Your Customer, you had to do what you call due diligence. And if the customer had a certain risk profile, then you had to do enhanced due diligence.
Well, what I want to tell you at this time, Crispin is not a banking expert. Mr. Williams may be, and he's not around to speak to you on that subject. So let's stick to the subject at hand for the time being. Somebody says to me, find out who got the US 100,000 from Lashkin. It was initially deposited at the Rosso Credit Union in the name of a political party, then changed into the name of an individual. Well, do you know anything about that?
That's news to me.
100,000 US dollars.
Well, Matt,
from Mr. Lashkin.
I did see documentation.
Yes.
About the 100,000.
Okay.
It was offered by Lashkin to his handlers who were gonna push the case for him. Now, here's the interesting thing. I can't say whether all that money transferred, but Lashkin had actually put a schedule of payments.
Yes.
He broke it into 3 payments. 33,000 when the case is filed. At another juncture, the other 33%. So there were benchmarks that you would have to fulfill to get the result. But it was definitely offered, and it was not offered directly to a minister, right? It was offered to a broker who is a lawyer, who is linked to the powers that he be. He was the fiscal agent. I call him the fiscal agent of the deal.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
a lot is coming out here in the public here this afternoon. 224. You heard a lot of Mr. Monfaret.
Yes.
He seemed to be under the radar in recent times, given your international contacts. Do you know? Have you heard?
I have followed the whole thing of Mr. Monfaret. Well, you know, most Dominicans know that's Calypso, my Dominica trade house.
Right.
So that is where we were always suspicious about my Dominica trade house, but we never knew the full story until it really broke. I would really like to know who introduced them to this guy, because the guy was a spy from Iran, running an operation for the Iranian government abroad, posing as a businessman in Malaysia who has money to invest.
So he was a spy for Iran?
Yes, he was a spy for Iran, and still is a spy for Iran. I don't know if his neck will be on his body in the next few months, but because one of his colleagues is already sentenced to death for stealing. You see, in Iran, there are a couple of things that can happen to you when you steal. They can cut your hands, both hands, and if Monfaret, that might well be, they don't want to kill him because he's of use. He has given them enough information about the Dominica government that...
You think?
Of course, Matt. Of course, Mr. That's why the Iranians wanted him alive, so he can tell them the full story of how he was able to worm his way into a government and even to be hiding in that country.
Well, you're asking a very important question. Who introduced Monfaret to Dominica?
I would love to know, but I think it's one of the operatives. I surmise it's one of the... There's an operative in that whole cabal, if you will.
Right.
That his main job is to recommend people for diplomatic passports. That is his key job. And Matt, what I found, right, a lot of the people who have gotten diplomatic passports in that equation, have been economic citizens. So they come to the table by being an economic citizen, and they exit the table with a diplomatic passport as well. So they end up with 2 passports. And Montferrat fit into that category. Yes. But there are others that and names that we're not familiar with. You haven't heard of my good friend from Czech Republic, Mr. František Savov.
We should be worried about this one, Joe?
Yeah, because what happened, Matt, is that when his name came to my attention many years ago, and he was appointed Dominica's ambassador to Slovakia. Do you have business in Slovakia, Matt? I mean, do you know of...
No.
You know, I worked in Slovakia, so now I can tell you, there's nothing in Slovakia that we want. Slovakia is one of the poor European countries that is part of the EU. I used to go to Bratislava 2-3 times a year in the period before I went to the UN, because I had a project in Slovakia. So there's nothing in Slovakia for Dominica. I don't know why we would have an ambassador, but when it happened, I told the foreign ministry that was not a good decision, because Czechoslovakia, which was the country you knew before the Soviet Union collapsed, and Czech became 2 countries, Czech Republic on the one hand, Slovakia on the other. I would never advise a government to appoint a Czech citizen to be ambassador to Slovakia. I wouldn't. To me, that's just in poor taste and a lack of understanding of these people and the country. So František Savov, he not only did he become an economic citizen of Dominica, he opened a company here called European Finance Trust, using the address of the chambers of Alec Lawrence.
Wow.
And when I started researching it, and in the Czech newspapers, I found the address of that place here in Roseau in the Czech newspaper, where they're doing an expose on František Savov. Well, I didn't worry about Savov for many years, because there were more important figures who came to the fore, like Ng Lapseng, for example. So now you know, Angelo Allen was always talking about a Mr. Wu. But I never knew that Mr. Wu also had 2 other names. Ng Lapseng, or Ing, it's actually pronounced Ing in Chinese, Ing Lapseng. But there's another guy, another name called David Ing, David Ng. David Ng, it's the same person, you know, Mark. So Mr. Wu, David Ng, and Ng Lapseng is the same person, huh? Ng Lapseng had been running an operation at the UN. He had 6 NGOs at the UN, doing undercover work at the UN, borrowing and building and supporting a whole set of activities at the UN that the UN didn't have money for. Like, for example, we did a series of concerts for the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery. Ng Lapseng, one of his organizations, actually provided funding in 2009 without us knowing who really was behind this. And I remember I was the chairman of the committee, and I asked him, but who is Mr. At that time they told me it was Mr. Wu who was funding the thing. So I said, who is Mr. Wu? They couldn't tell me. So I said, well, the UN legal office should give us a legal opinion about whether we should accept the money. And the UN is very careful about taking money from private people. So the UN legal office said the UN shouldn't receive the money. The money was done, what was done was they got a cultural NGO in New York to give them a grant to provide the funding for the concert. Because to do a concert at the UN, you have to bring in the sound equipment, the lighting equipment, and you have to build the stage. That alone can cost $80,000 just to have a concert there for one night, because it's not a concert hall. So Ng Lapseng underwrite that cost through one of his NGOs. All right?
Wow.
And Matt, the other thing is that even the memorial for the victims of slavery at the UN, one of Ng Lapseng's NGOs gave $60,000. You know, so that was how he was buying influence at the UN.
Any impact and influence on us in Dominica? Because we're hearing that we may have had some ties with Mr. Who? Because you're giving him so many names that I don't want them to call him.
Let's call him Ng Lapseng or Ing Lapseng or David Ing. Well, here's what the thing, Matt. I had such interest in that case because I went to I went to the bill hearing for NG lapsing, and in New York court, federal court, and the prosecutors were arguing that he shouldn't be granted bail because he'd be a flight risk. And the main reason they said he was a flight risk is he had a Dominica diplomatic passport. It was revealed in the court. I mean, the judge, he said, are you talking about the island that just had that tropical storm? That was just, around the time after Erica. Because you remember that the Prime Minister was in Macau with NG Lapsing when Erica hit. He has never told her. And he signed an agreement with NG Lapsing, which he has never tabled before the Dominican public. Ask him to bring that to the table.
2:31. It reads like a Hollywood script here this afternoon. We're in with the ambassador, Mr. Gregoire. Hello, talk to me. Are you there, caller? No, I suspect you missed out. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good information. Christian, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Your friend from Pitchland. You're from Grande. Why know all this information? And Matthias, I will ask you the question again. I asked Joshua Francis. Crispin mentioned that the Prime Minister had a dual citizenship prior to the election. I will ask that question again. What happened to the people or the persons who nominated the Prime Minister? I am asking that question again because the people who nominated the Prime Minister signed on his behalf should be persecuted. What happened to them? All the fingers have been pointed at the Prime Minister. Fine, that's fine. But what happened to the persons or the person who nominated the Prime Minister, bro?
Well, I cannot answer to that, caller, because I don't know these people. As you're right, they may be liable to persecution, but I don't know who these people are. 2:33.
Yeah.
There should be a legal team. Should there be a legal team taking that up? Maybe we'll find out. Hello.
Mr. Pelter, blessings to you.
A lot is coming out here. Hi.
Yeah, but I am listening attentively, and I noticed a caller was asking, allow the intellectuals to intervene. What did they call? I allow him to hope, sir. It's very interesting. Why now, my brethren? There is nothing. You see, everything have a time and a place. Let's make reference to what Skerrit says. All about, look at the brother. The brother, I mean, he have a lot of discipline to be able to retain that amount of information. I hope I know he's not reading from something, Matt.
No, he's
He could reserve.
Speaking from his mind here.
Yeah, he could reserve this information, and he knew exactly what was happening. And I'm really concerned, and I think everything worked out for the better. And I am about to ask him the question, Matt. What do you think? I mean, the laws of coincidence is not consistent, sir. There was no epidemic. There was no pandemic. There was no war. In quick succession, we lose 2 prime ministers. Mr. Gregor, can you please... You do not have to go into details, but what were your suspicions, your gut feeling? Thank
Blessings, you want to get me in trouble. You want to speculate. But let me just... The previous caller before Blessings asked why now. Well, I try to be a consummate professional. I served the government of Dominica at the UN with distinction and honor. And I was privy to certain information, and it would be unprofessional of me to just go out and babble, and just say things. And I waited. It's been. I left them. They fired me in 2010. We in 17. I went to work for the UN for 3 years. A
lot of things still bother you?
Yes. The administration is crude in their behavior, very crude. And one of the things I learned about Labour Party long time, even long before Mr. Skerrit, is that Labour Party, there's a tendency to turn on each other. The Labour Party doesn't have a good history of embracing its own. They turn on each other. If you disagree, they will take you to the cleaners, and they will try to make things difficult for you. And this is what has happened here. The fact that
it's still happening today.
Yes, the fact that I had a different point of view than the Prime Minister and Vince Henderson, they wanted to ostracize me. What I want these guys to understand is that I've been in politics since I was 13 years old. I have been in high politics and I've been in low politics. Nobody runs me out. Nobody, and the thing is, Matt, you know, I'm a selfless individual. I come from a revolutionary background. The kind of guys I embrace is like UNICEF in Granby, the guy who eventually ended the plantocracy in Granby, Philip Francis. Guys like that. These are my boys. These are the guys I learned under. Pierre Charles. So, you know, I don't need to, I've spent most of my life in opposition. I don't need to have access to power, but do the right thing. And I'm telling you, the current administration has lost their way. They reached a fork.
You think so?
They have reached a fork in the road and they've gone down the wrong part of the fork. So they're going down into a slippery slope. And I'm telling you that if the only reason why they're still in office is because they refuse to do electoral reform. And that is going to be the most critical issue going forward politically.
Let's talk about it a bit.
Yes.
Electoral reform. What's your own view on that?
My view is that it's overtime. We're in overtime. We should have had electoral reform before the 2009 election.
You think the government is afraid of electoral reform?
I think they're afraid. I would be afraid if I were they. Because, you know, electoral reform will create a level playing field. That's the first thing, and that's the most important thing. It will ensure integrity in elections. We cannot allow to have fraudulent elections. And Matt, you covered the Commonwealth report. It was damning. The Commonwealth report was even more far-reaching than the OAS report. And the OAS has been making these recommendations for the last 2 elections. The OAS is disappointed in Dominica for not following up on his recommendation and creating a context where we'll have elections of integrity. We haven't had a new voters list for 30 years. We have people on the voters list that shouldn't be on the voters list. They're deceased. We have people who've lived abroad for 30 years, yet they're still on the list.
So you think if there's electoral reform, the Labour Party will not win the election in Dominica? No.
I think the Labour Party will have a challenge winning. I cannot say that they will not win. But I can see that the Labour Party is not much stronger than the opposition party, you know, in terms of numbers. And also, too, the fact is that I could see a clear path where the opposition could actually win an election. They came very close last time. Had it not been for these overseas voters, it would have been...
You think so?
Yes, yes. And also, too, the Labour Party must realize it's going for a 5th term. People are tired of their scandals. Labour Party is mired in a lot of scandals, which start at the top of the administration. So there's you know, Matt, what I would like to happen in Dominica? I'd like a truth commission where we can discuss the CBI, the diplomatic passports, we can discuss electoral reform. And on electoral reform, I would say that it is not the preserve of the ruling party to have electoral. It must be a multi-party conference that leads to electoral reform. All the Electoral Commission should engage all the parties. Now, I think last week they called a meeting of the three parties, the Freedom Party, the UWP, and the Labour Party. I'm saying that is the direction we need to go. It must be an all-party consultation leading to electoral reform. So we all agree. It's not about the ruling party deciding that. No. So when they go and try to pass this thing in Parliament, thank God, whoever spoke to Mr. Skerritt about putting this thing on hold, and I hope it's on indefinite hold, because he should not go and amend the electoral law to allow treating and bribing and all of this stuff to become law. No. We have to have a level playing field, and we have to have the conditions for elections of integrity. And until we have that, the call for electoral reform must be a relentless call. We must continue to call for it, and the democratic forces in this country must ensure that we have it, and that, to me, frankly, there should be no election until there's electoral reform.
Wow.
That's my view.
This is a powerful program here in the afternoon. Somebody say, Matt, please replay this one on Sunday. We will try, okay? Hello, talk to me.
Good afternoon, Matt. Good afternoon, Ambassador.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Just briefly, I know time is of the limit. Can you just give us briefly what are the privileges that a diplomatic holder have? and how that can be used in criminal activity.
All right, we're going to allow Mr. Gregor to answer that question, but we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back, Dominica, right after this.
The Dominica Water Sports Association and headline partner Kubuli present Divefest 2017, July 2nd to 16th.
Yes, right, yeah. It's good. I like the fact that you expanded it to
2nd July for
it's 2 hours or 3 hours.
On July 7th with the Happy Hour kickoff featuring Fanatic, Lale Coco. Saturday 8th, Discover Scuba, Anchorage Hotel, and Lobster and Mussels Lunch and Dinner, Sunset Bay. Sunday 9th, Whale Watching Departing Anchorage from 9 a.m. Indian River Boat Rides, half price all day. Wave Dancer Water Sports, Outdoor World Vibes Radio Water Park Challenge, Picard Beach from 3 p.m. followed by the Full Moon Beach Party. Monday 10th, a day at the fisheries. Tuesday 11th, Island-wide Coastal Cleanup. Then evening time, Belfast Estate, roast bakes and rum shots at Beluga, Citronelle. Music by DJ Epic. Wednesday 12th, Discover Scuba, Sunset Bay Club. Later down, come to the Juice Man, Pottersville for Smoothie Night with DJ Smooth. Thursday 13th, Lionfish Suppression Day and the Johnny Walker Shing Ping Ting at Fort Young Waterfront from 7 p.m. Friday 14th, Sac Passe, T-Vibe live in concert on the Strip. Saturday 15th, Champagne Reef Kids Snorkel Treasure Hunt, Discover Scuba in Portsmouth, and Aquaholic Drippin' Wet Water Park, Lale Coco. Look out for the free diving world record attempt in Sufria. Divefest will climax with the Kalinago Canoe Races and the Kubuli Beach Party in Sufria. Divefest is supported by Petro Caribe, Kubuli, Fort Young Hotel, Seatpath, Rosalie Bay Resort, the Boardwalk Restaurant, Johnny Walker, Outdoor World, Belfast Estate, Clare Harbor, the Discover Dominica Authority, Digicel, and TBS Radio.
When last have you been to LA Jupini Hardware? That long? Well then, come in to see what's new in stock. Kitchenware, pots, pans, plumbing and bathroom accessories, small appliances, garden tools, a full range of cutlasses, and so much more. Take advantage of our layaway option. Set up a gift for a special occasion, or pick up that much-needed item for your home or garden. Come home to quality at our convenient location on Long Lane in Roseau. Hardware.
Come home to quality at LA Dupini. Swing by for quality.
It's 2:43 in the afternoon. We're having a very interesting afternoon there with the former ambassador of the UN to Dominica, and of course, former ambassador at the UN itself. Somebody asked you a very interesting question as it relates to your responsibilities as ambassador.
Yeah.
And can you get involved with criminal activities? That was the gist of the question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that there are a lot of people who want diplomatic passports because they think it will protect them if they do illegal stuff. But it really doesn't protect you. You know, a diplomatic passport only protects you if you are accredited to a particular place. So if, let's say, you were the ambassador to China, for example, Dominica's ambassador to China, you find yourself in a situation, in a criminal situation, or even, let us say, an accident, like you driving and you kill somebody on the streets in a car accident, but you're liable. They might not prosecute you because you are the ambassador, you have some immunities and privileges, and they will look the other way. They will, you know, but if U.S. government gives me a diplomatic passport and I go and carry drugs to Barbados and I get caught, I'm going to be prosecuted. That passport is not going to help me. Now, so some people are under the illusion that having a diplomatic passport will help them to have immunity. It doesn't work that way. You only get immunity when you are accredited as a bona fide diplomat representing your government so all of those people who have diplomatic passports issued by Roseau, they don't have immunity. They don't even know they have a useless document, because if they get caught, they will be prosecuted for whether money laundering or carrying drugs. Now, what does a diplomatic passport do for you as a businessman? You might not have visa requirements, or you getting a visa will be easier. Getting custom courtesies, you could go through customs with them opening your bags. You don't pay departure taxes in various places. I was shocked when I was traveling throughout the region because of the diplomatic passport. I don't pay departure tax in Barbados, in Jamaica, wherever I go. You know, so that those courtesies are there. That's probably all you get, but it doesn't give you immunity.
Question: what about our own relationship with the UN at this time? We've had, since yourself, we've had 2 ambassadors. We have a new one. I heard just last week we established relations with about 4 other countries. What is our current relationship with the UN at this time, and how are we doing at the UN as country?
Well, Matt, after I left, you know, one of the sad things that happened was that I was never thanked by the government for my tenure at the UN.
That's true.
I did a lot for Dominica because my legacy speaks for itself at the UN, but it's not my legacy, it's Dominica's legacy. We championed the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery, made that an annual event for the UN. Dominica was leading that charge, right? With the African countries and the CARICOM countries coming together. It gave us a good profile. We have a memorial at the UN to the victims of slavery. Unfortunately, Dominica is the only country in the CARICOM that didn't give money to the memorial. That was really a sore spot for me. On the indigenous peoples, we were also playing a leadership role on that question. I even end up, when I was asked to be the ambassador of the UN responsible for the conference on indigenous people, the global conference on indigenous people. That was an honor for a Dominican. You know, I come from a country that have less than 100,000 people. I'm organizing the UN conference on indigenous people, the first time they ever had a UN conference, and that should be an honor. And for Dominica, it was not even mentioned here, and they didn't even send Kalinago people to the conference. You know, I don't get it. But Matt, in response to your question, one of the gaps that I think at the UN for Dominica is that we don't build on what we have achieved from one ambassador to the other. I feel that for a country that doesn't have many diplomats, like when Vince Henderson came to the UN, he chose not to avail himself of the knowledge that I had and the experience at the UN. And I had a high profile at the UN. I mean, look, if you ask any one of the CARICOM ambassadors, it's not for me, it's for Dominica. It's not about Crispin Gregoire. It's for Dominica to give us, because I was the first full-time ambassador at the UN in the entire history of our time, or since we became independent. Because, you know, it was first ambassador we had at the UN was Arlington Riviere, who's now, I think he's now deceased, right? Then after him, it was Frank Barron, who's also deceased, and then we had Mr. Richards. His first name escapes me. Simon Richards was the 3rd ambassador, and then I'm the 4th. Simon Richards was there for many years, but he was part-time. He worked at a law firm, and Miss Charles had asked him to represent us, but on a part-time basis. When Rosie became the Prime Minister, Simon Richards became full-time, but then it wasn't a long time after that he left. And he told me, you know, Crispin, it's a daunting task for one person, because Dominica is the only country in CARICOM that only has one diplomat at the UN, you know. Only the ambassador. There's no way the ambassador can do all that work. You know, so what I thought we should do as a country is that we should build a network of these ambassadors so that as one leaves, we share information with each other and we remain a resource to the incumbent who is there. So that didn't happen with Vince Henderson. He doesn't talk to me.
He didn't talk to you?
No, the entire time he was there, Matt, he never talked to me. And he misbehaved when
So he never asked you?
He never asked for advice. He never talked to me. The moment first of all, Matt, he really behaved in a very unprofessional way when he came to take his job. And if I tell you the full details, you'll shudder.
So you didn't pass on the baton in an official way?
No. And I was ready to do that, but he wasn't. And the other thing is that they only gave me 2 weeks notice. They gave me 2 weeks notice.
Get out.
Yeah, and he arrived after the 2 weeks. So, you know, there was no time to really do any proper handing over. And then I told him that he can call me at any time. I'm in New York. The guy never called me the entire time he was in New York. He never talked to me.
How do you know what's going on? It's 9 minutes before 3 o'clock. We're just going to allow a few more questions, and then we will wrap it up with the ambassador. I'm so happy you could come in and spend some time with us. Hello.
Matt, well, I'm not questioning. I just going to comment on something further, Matt. You about the results and the impact of the diaspora vote. Matt, it's not a matter of thinking, or it's a matter of basic knowledge and basic math and basic common sense will let anybody know that in the absence of the imported votes, the DLP would have lost the election. When you import 300-400 people in St. Joseph, but you win St. Joseph by 180-200, it means the opposition is stronger than you in St. Joseph. And we can say the same for La Plaine. And we can say the same for Castle Bruce and several cities. You could do the math in Roseau Valley. They won by 80. They brought down much more than 80. If you remove the imported votes in these constituencies, the Labour Party would not have won. This is why they're always in campaign mode, because they know their win is a makeshift win. It's not a real win. And you still have the dead votes. You still have the double voting. All of that just to win a seat by 80 and 100. With electoral reform, they will fall flat on their face.
I suspect you support that.
I know this caller is right on target. I mean, that is clear, and the Labour Party knows that. And Matt, one of the things that I tried to caution the administration about, I didn't like the fact that the consulate in New York was involved in organizing the voting people and the charter flights and all of that.
You have no doubt that they were involved.
It's not a matter of, I have no doubt. I was right there, and I complained to the foreign ministry that was unacceptable, because that office in New York belongs to the Dominican people irrespective of party. You cannot use the consulate of Dominica to organize voters to go and vote for, you know, that's just illegal and unacceptable. And I maybe these are some of the reasons why I was not, you know, I didn't like me, but that's all right.
All right. Let's take a few more phone calls and we'll wrap it up with the ambassador. Very interesting, very revealing. Hello. Another phone call. Are you there, caller?
Good afternoon.
Yes, quickly.
Matter around about a month ago to 2 months ago, I sat with a guy in a bar, and he said he has same name and surname with his uncle, and he voted twice, and I will not say in which well, I'll say Rose on the other spot, I will not say where.
All right, caller. Thank you. We're moving on to 54. Thanks for the information. Hello.
Hello, Mabayas.
Mola. Mola.
Crispin.
Hey, Zakavet.
How fair?
Mola.
Crispin, Bamadousa, who say on the top leader, who va changer moi pour parler les boss moi.
Oui.
2005, ever dit mon handbag, ou même son mauvais laborite. But of course, mon savon son mauvais laborite. Ça, monsieur, yo, fait ou à côté mon ça, monsieur, fait mon gars de monsieur, pas de gentil, monsieur, pas de soucis. Là, vous regardez les ministères qui ont marché, Mittal et Apita, c'est je passe là. Si vous regardez, monsieur, pas de soucis pour le pays. C'est mener un pays de cette plate. So, Crispin, nous vous beaucoup pour venir en Guambé, pour nous lever Guambé encore, parce que Guambé, ou même quand vous partez là pour week-end pour l'état village, non?
Guambé a dormi, mais ça qui fait tout ça, si ça fait ça, yo fait moins. C'est pas un autre monde pas qui fait ça, c'est moi qui t'ai un beau yo labor.
Right.
Et yo les jouer ou dit c'est yo qui ni labor là mais mon père pour labor actuellement.
Okay, so mon le ou vini leve Guambé, tu es Guambé en sommeil.
All right, thank you. Let me ask a question. It may be a little difficult. We have the current MP for Granby, who's the wife of the former Prime Minister of Dominica. And some people are saying they cannot understand how and why his wife is behaving the way she is. That's how they describe it.
Yeah.
How would you describe it? Given people say Perry may be turning in his grave, why would he be turning in his grave, Crispin?
Well, because first of all, she she's behaving as though she didn't know what transpired during the time that Pero was the prime minister. Because Roosevelt Skerritt was the most unruly minister in Pero's cabinet and disrespected Pero. He really did. And I'm telling you, if it was me, it would be a different ball game. But anyway, she's playing a blind eye to that.
She knew.
She has to know, man. She was the wife. If she didn't know, then she was then in the dark. But I refuse to believe she didn't know. And if she knew, then she would behave differently. She probably wouldn't even accept it to be part of that arrangement of running for office.
Were you surprised that she did?
I was surprised because I didn't think that she was in the equation. There were other people that Skerritt had as alternatives to me, and her name was not at the high on that list. But I was surprised that she was the next go-to person. And then, she never told me that that approach had been made. She just began to see me as, just like Roosevelt Skerritt saw me, as a problem chap.
Until now?
Yeah, until now, because the schism, I remember I mentioned the schism in Granby right now within the Labour camp. Labour in Granby is not totally united. There's the Ed Regis and others who have serious problems with Mrs. Charles, all right? And because she has an underhanded way of approaching how to lead. She's subverting and undermining the Granby Village Council. Let them do their work. You are the MP, So the Granby people, they are Labour, and it will be difficult for any opposition party to bring a change in Granby because you have to understand that the Pierre Charles political legacy and machinery is so pervasive, it's hard to dislodge it now. But Granby people are now asking themselves the question, after supporting Labour for more than 20 years, going back to Pierre Charles in 85 to now, what has Granby really gotten from Labour Party? Not much. Crumbs in my view, crumbs.
You have hope for Dominica? We have 2 more minutes.
I have great hope for Dominica. I think it's an important country in the Caribbean. Where we are located between Guadeloupe and Martinique. Very important location. We need to build on that. We have resources. We can build a new economy. And I think we need to end the tribal war. We must lead to build consensus. Those of our leaders must build consensus and bring our people together. People will always support their party, they support whoever. But the government must be seen to be fair for all the people. That's why I believe in all shall eat. Not just Labour Party should eat. I think everybody should eat. Once you're in government, everybody should share at the trough. Okay? I see too much partisanship in 2017. Too much partisanship. That must end. That's why the country is in crisis. The partisanship is too entrenched. And we have to believe that we can make a difference, that our country is an important country in CARICOM. We have important relationships with the rest of the world and we'll continue to do that. But we must have good leadership and we must stop these relationships of giving people diplomatic passports, people we don't know, people who will destroy our country's image. And that is what's happening right now.
In 30 seconds, the attacks is going to come, Crispin.
Oh yeah. Matt, I'm a Jean Guambe, Matt. First and foremost, I'm a Jean Guambe, and I have been through that thick and thin. I'm not afraid of attacks. I'm not afraid. The attack dogs tell them that I'll be walking the streets this afternoon. Let them attack me.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Crispin Gregoire spent past 2 hours with us. This has been Talk on the Block. Lime Always next on the big station.